Have you ever wondered why you feel stuck? Even though you know what you want, you've read the books, you've tried to push yourself, and you still can't seem to get where you want to go or make that crazy change? Well, my friends, there is a reason for that. And surprise, surprise, it is not willpower. It is your nervous system running those exact same patterns that you learned years ago. Welcome back to Becoming Unbound. I'm Carly Butler, your host today, and this conversation is all about how we change our nervous system. After going through this breakthrough moment and changing my whole life, I have become obsessed with understanding why change feels so hard, even when we deeply, deeply desire it. And one of the things that I've learned is that your nervous system will always choose familiarity over freedom until you show it another way, which is why I am so excited for today's conversation with Brittany Lynn. She's a holistic nutritionist, a client of mine, the host of the Anxious Girls podcast, and soon to be psychotherapist. So her story is incredible. She healed her own PCOS in her early 20s and has guided countless women through the emotional roots of their symptoms and has a grounded, no nonsense way of explaining how those patterns keep us looped in the same old stories. So in this episode, we are going to explore why the body clings to these old patterns and why we are staying stuck, and maybe even how your childhood wiring is keeping you stuck from making adult decisions. We also talk about how to shift out of survival mode and, really just unpack how we can change our lives without uprooting everything overnight. My friends, I'm so excited for this conversation. Get out your notebook, get some tea, and let's figure out why we stay stuck in those old patterns. All right. Brittany, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being
You.
here today.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I don't know if the listeners know our relationship or how we met, but I'll let you kind of tell them because it's fun to be on your podcast.
Yeah, so I am Brittany's podcast manager. We met through a mutual client of mine, and it's just sort of been this beautiful process of producing Brittany's amazing The Anxious Girl podcast. If you have not heard of that, go listen to it. It's so good, so relatable. I feel like our podcasts are actually like they could be besties.
Sisters, sister podcast.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, and we've been working together for a little while now. We just wrapped your season 1, which was amazing. You had so many cool guests, and I'm so excited for season 2. And
Right.
why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and a bit of your journey?
Yeah.
How do like the Cole's notes of how Brittany came to be in this wellness world and all
Uh,
the juicy details.
yeah. I always have to remember Cole's notes, because I just love to like talk and share and like all the pieces are important. But the Cole's notes were I was completely infertile, had no menstrual cycle for 2.5 years. I was really young, like early 20s. And I was told, I would never have children naturally and all of these things. I was diagnosed with something called polycystic ovarian syndrome, or PCOS, which a lot of women today, that's like the number one reproductive issue that women suffer with today. And I remember being offered different medications and what have you. And I remember just saying, this is not for me. I know the body heals. Like, I know we're designed to heal. I know this beautiful machine is brilliant. And that actually, like, I went back to school for holistic nutrition really to heal my PCOS. So when I originally enrolled in the school, I wasn't even thinking about necessarily having a business and all the things. And then I remember my follow up with my gynecologist, and there were no more cysts. I had completely reversed this irreversible condition, PCOS. And I remember the OBGYN, she was like, "Do you have a business card?" So, like, the professional, and I don't say that to be disrespectful, but like the professional was asking me, this like, mid-20s gal who just finished her holistic nutrition license, for a business card, because she's like, I don't see this often, right? I have to put women on birth control and I have to do all these things. And in that moment, I was like, every woman has to know about this. Like, everybody has to know how powerful our bodies are, and that we have the tools, we have the ingredients. We just have to learn about them. And fast forward over the years, I've had two babies since, and the piece around the emotional health piece, the nervous system piece, all of this started to kind of get dripped in my path. As in my clinical practice, I started to see people would get better and then they would
Mm.
revert back to square one. Then they would get better and then they would revert back to square one. And I realized, okay, there's something so much deeper to this picture of health and healing and all of the things. And it really lies in the emotional body and our nervous system. So that's like the foundation. And then we have this like physical body, which is the manifestation of the emotional body, energetic body, all these other pieces. Yeah.
Wow, what a
Yeah.
powerful story. And I mean, I
Mhm.
think about this on a daily basis, like because I I listen to every single episode of your podcast. So I am always walking away with like the golden nuggets. And so I always love that you bring it back to like our body is so intelligent, and like we talk about this so much on this podcast, is that like the signs, the symptoms, the things going on in our bodies
Mhm.
are real. Like I want to validate every single person who's ever
Oh, yeah.
felt like a tummy ache, a headache, a heart palpitation, a like tightness in your chest or in your shoulders or something. Like all of those are real and they are signs telling
Mhm.
you something. And it's about finding
Yeah.
the awareness to find out what is that. And so the
Yeah.
fact that you were able to like listen and be like, my intuition is telling me that I know that the body can heal, and
Yeah.
you and you proved every
Yeah.
diagnosis that you'd ever gotten kind of
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah. And I love too, because it is going against the narrative of giving so much, like we give the power, we give a lot of our health, our power, our outcomes, our prognosis, we give it up to the white coat.
Mm,
And, they only know what they know and they only know what they've been taught. And something that has really become obvious and aware, at least in my journey, is that it's a very small amount. It's in a box, right? And they treat the body very compartmentalized. And that's not the way our body works. And so, for any woman who's, yeah, has the tummy ache or the migraine, or this is how your body's speaking to you, and our body is a symphony. So it's never just your reproductive system and it's never just your gut. It's never just your sinuses that are always clogged. This is a multifaceted system that is interdependent and is always communicating. And yeah, our body is literally, its language is symptoms, right? And so here we are, like numbing the symptoms, trying to get rid of the symptoms when
yeah.
your body is so brilliant that it's like, hey, I need this, right? I'm sending you this signal. But we've learned to, like, we fear the symptom almost. We want to push it away. Whereas I'm here, like, no, let's like explore that pain. Let's sit with that. Let's, right? Like navigate where that's coming up for you.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I think you bring up such a point of like one of the things that I think can keep us so stuck is that the idea that we just outsource our
Yeah.
very in like built-in system, this alarm bell system that we have, and we outsource that to be like somebody else knows better than me. And I think that is such a thing that could keep us so stuck, is that like if you are constantly giving this beautiful intelligence that you have going on both in your mind, emotional, physical, body,
Yeah.
and you're constantly just being like, yeah, no, I'm going to let someone else, the professional, and I get it. They are so good at so many things and there's so
Yeah.
many advancements that like are so
Yeah.
amazing. But if we keep externalizing our own wisdom about the body, like it's you're going to stay stuck.
Mhm.
So,
And this is for business too.
right.
This is like, we outsource strategy. What do you think I should do? And what do you think we do? And there's so much of this like authenticity piece that comes from intuition and that comes from us living in our bodies. Am I in my body? Can I hear? I call them pings or
Mm.
nudges, right? Can I hear the next step for myself? And if I'm outsourcing that same kind of piece, I'm never connecting with like, what is my true intuitive higher self saying? What's the next best step for me? And I work through this on the daily with business, with motherhood, with everything. Like it really is this like embodiment, this practice of embodiment. And
So
and that, yeah.
So tell us about that. What was that moment where you knew you were like, where you decided to listen to your intuition? I know you had gone through to be a holistic nutritionist. And so like you had backed this up. I feel like you've been practicing, but was there like a moment where you were like, no, 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 nope, stop. I know that there's another way to do this.
Um, so it's kind of like a two-tiered process because it was a download that I got in the OBGYN's office or the gynecologist's office. It was like when she said, okay, so, you have PCOS, we're going to put you on birth control pill. We're going to put you on metformin. That's another drug that they put you on for insulin control. And it literally was like, and I teach my clients this all the time. It was like a full body no, right? We have full body yeses and then we have full body nos. And it was a full body no. It was just like a higher thing, a higher intelligence that was guiding me. This is not your way. I'm not judging anybody who decides to go on medication, but for me it was like this is not your way. There was a different way. And then the second tier was again just following this path of embodiment. And I always say things come to me in the shower. Like things don't come to me in meditation. They don't come to me in my breath work. They don't come to me in the way that I hear people being like, oh, and then I saw this vision. It's like, no, I'm like showering or doing something so basic. And the second tier was it came to me that it's like you have the emotional body and you have the physical body, and then you have the nervous system that runs down the middle and blends these two worlds. And unless we're working on the stories, the patterns, the parts that have been developed in our childhood and from trauma, big trauma, little trauma, all the things, unless we're kind of unwinding, unbecoming, and unprogramming. And I'm careful to say this, it's not that we never heal, because really, what are we all looking for? What's like the end healing goal? But we stay stuck, like you're saying. So this second tier aha moment was this is all about our frequency. This is so much tied to our emotional health, what we haven't processed, what we've shoved down. And I also think a huge piece of our health is finding purpose.
Mm.
That's been like the latest aha. When we're on
Things.
purpose, I swear to God, our health is like extraordinary. It's like
Yeah,
a different frequency.
it's like when those things are not aligned with you, it like will again, signs and symptoms, it will tell you and like it will drain you and wear down on you when you're like and I feel like that's when you see people who are in these long careers and you're like, yep, they've just been hustling along, going, going, going. And you're like, and yet your health is just deteriorating. And you're like, I don't know why. Like I eat healthy, I do the
I'm
things,
doing,
I move
yeah,
my body, but
yeah,
nothing's working.
yeah, yeah. So I love this story of my one client. I'll never forget. I'll not say her actual name.
Mhm.
I'll call her Amanda. Anyway, and she had an autoimmune. So this was like way back when in my clinic practice, where again, as I was in clinic, it was like I was getting these nudges of like, ask her about her job, right? Because as a nutritionist, you would think all I ask her about is food and what supplements and what medications, but it was like, ask her about her job. Ask her about how much joy she has in her life. Ask her about how much connection she has in her life, all these things. She was in a government job. She did like budgeting, numbers, whatever. It was very mundane, boring. Her marriage was kind of falling apart. Like it was just very whatever. And we worked together for over a year. And at the end of the year, fast forward, she ended up leaving her job and starting a photography business, a pet photography, because dogs were like her thing. It was like she was obsessed with them. She had two dogs at home and she was always taking like photography courses and whatever. I kid you not. It was like watching her immune markers, watching her blood work change. as she started to step into the photography, as she started to kind of let go of that job. Now, she was upon retirement anyway. She had an amazing pension, like all these things. So she did have those pieces in place where she could just let go of it. But watching her physical health transform when she like started to align with something that lit her heart up. Like, you know what I mean? It was like incredible. So that again, if we want to talk about those moments where you're like, this shit's real, right? This is really important for all of us to find. And if it's not the job that pays your bills, find something on the side that feels aligned and purposeful and brings you pleasure, like heart pleasure, right? So anyway, that's a story I love to tell because it was
I
like,
love that.
yeah, it's like spirit gave me the example to be like, here, right? You can watch her
Wow.
thyroid markers change, like watch her blood work change. And, broccoli didn't do that. I love I love my B12, but it didn't do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. And I feel like
Fun.
that's such a good indication. And I love that you said that it doesn't have to be like your main job, but like a source of alignment, of purpose, of joy, of like I've heard one time it was Bashar that said find the source of excitement in your life and go towards that. Doesn't mean like go all in on that, but go towards that. Like what little micro movements can you make that go towards that? Like is it taking a course? Is it, taking on a client once on the weekend while you have your job and maybe you start to work your way towards that. Like I think the idea of becoming unbound for anyone listening is like we talk about this a lot. You don't have to go all in, balls to the walls, like you quit everything, you leave every relationship and you move countries. Like that's another piece that's a whole nervous system suitcase there.
And really
But
important, yeah, to talk
but
about,
can
yeah.
you do little micro shifts? And then in each little micro shift, like celebrate that and see what that does to change. Like I mean, if you're not doing blood work, I get it, but like you'll be able to notice those small little shifts in how you show up every day, how you show up for those relationships and your family and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So important. And so I wanted to ask, that kind of brings me into the nervous system piece of that I just mentioned, like making all those massive changes, like not something that I super recommend. I recommend doing the Becoming Unbound process like a little slower. So talk to us about the nervous system and how that keeps us stuck. Because I feel like you are the perfect person for this.
So the phrase that keeps going through my head that I hate the most is feel the fear and do it anyways. And I'm sure all your listeners, we all know that. I think there's a book called that, like feel the fear and do it anyways. However, when our nervous system perceives something or has the tastings of or the remembrance of something that didn't feel safe, you weren't heard, you weren't seen, like whatever kind of body memory the thing you want to do is kind of tapping into, the nervous system says, absolutely not. I'm going to sabotage this. We're not going there. We're not starting that podcast. We're not moving to Europe. Like, we're not doing the thing, right? It's way too scary. And so I love when you talk about these kind of micro steps because we want to almost, I call it bookending. When we want to try something new or try something different or like step out onto the edge, maybe of entrepreneurship or, becoming unbound, like starting to kind of unbecome, right? Take the armor off. We want to regulate. So find safety in the body, do the thing, regulate. So it's like come from a place of resource safety, do the thing, maybe record the episode, reach out to that person, whoever it was, regulate. And so, and it often comes from like to your point, these little steps. I know there's been people who have done crazy, massive changes and they've gone all in, but I too don't recommend that because you can have a big backlash from that nervous system saying absolutely not, right? The job of your nervous system is to keep you safe. That is its number one focus. That's all it cares about. And it's doing a really good job a lot of the time. It thinks it's doing the best job ever,
Yeah.
right? Just by being like, you can't be seen by all these people. Don't go create content. Don't go do this. It's not safe, right? Last time you did that, it was so much shame or whatever. So your nervous system's actually this incredible mechanism and it's doing its job. It's just, are we playing off the database of a younger version of ourselves? Are the things that we want to step into in adulthood, are we playing off the kind of the nervous system memory or database of when we were little girls or little boys? And the answer is usually yes.
Yeah.
If we're stuck, we're like remembering the files all the way back when we were 5 years old, 6 years old, 8 years old, whatever. And oftentimes our database, our nervous system, so what we feel is safe, what we feel is unsafe, it needs to be updated. And
Mm.
that's a lot of the rewiring, like the repatterning work. And so bookending is a cool, I don't want to call it a tool, but I guess it is strategy maybe when you're wanting to try something new. Or maybe again, like dip your toes in the water instead of jumping in.
I
Yeah.
love that bookending. Yeah. And it feels like those are those little moments where it is just like it's just 5 deep breaths before you go book the wild meeting that feels so outside of your comfort zone, or and then it's after that going for a walk after that, just around the block, just to like bring yourself back down to be like, look, nervous system, we did a scary thing, but also we're still breathing. We can like identify the things in the room that are brown or whatever it
Yeah.
is that you
Yeah. The
do.
red or the brown.
Um,
Yeah.
so I love
And
that. And I'm so curious, those little things you talk about were going off patterns from when we were 8 or when, we were in, grade 10 and something happened to us that when we did, go out on a limb. What are some of those steps to start to rewire that? Because I know that's a big
yeah.
question, but
Yeah.
like, what does that look like? And I feel like this is what people talk about when they say do the work.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what are those things that you could do? Yeah, what is it?
Yeah. It's that's such a good question. I call it clearing the clutter. Like
Mm.
clearing the clutter from the nervous system. People call it repatterning, having restorative experiences. There's like all different kind of terminology around it. But I'm so glad you asked that question because even though right now nervous system regulation work, it's all over, at least it's all over my algorithm.
Yeah.
And it is the deep breaths and it is the light exposure and it is the cold exposure and it is these things. But there's so many nuances in the aspect of someone who like is truly suffering with PTSD or like deep trauma, childhood trauma, whatever. The entire world feels unsafe. It doesn't matter if it's a new podcast or a new relationship or getting a dog or whatever. Like they're literally oriented, everything is feeling unsafe. So there's nuances in this conversation, even when I bring up the technique of bookending.
Mm.
But to answer your question, we want to kind of update that database, right? And have what we call restorative experiences where I can orient to safety while doing that thing. So, an example, I tell this story. I think I told it in one of my episodes. Um, I would have been like 9 or 10, and I had my first solo in jazz, like my first solo competition. I was like on the stage. My parents paid a ton of money with this like choreographer. I was so prepped, I was so ready. I got up on stage and I turned around and I saw the audience and literally like forgot my entire routine. And I continued for like 3 minutes and 30 seconds, however long the song was, which felt like it was an hour long. I did jetés and pirouettes on that, like literally just kept repeating the same dance move. And my mom and my sister, like my whole family, everyone in the crowd is like, oh my God. That moment was a database anchor moment for me to not be seen. There is so much shame in being seen. That moment was so overwhelming. That 10-year-old or 11, or maybe I was even 8. That moment was so overwhelming for me. I could not process, I could not handle, I didn't have the support I needed in the moment or after the moment because I had to go back out for judging. So I had to literally walk back out onto the stage and not win. um, that was a trauma for me. And so my nervous system interpreted as that as you cannot be seen. It's not safe for you to be out on a stage.
Right.
It's not safe for you to be expressed, right? There's a lot of shame. Remember how bad that felt? So I'm going to protect you, right? I'm going to create kind of this armor around this idea of being seen. And through doing the work, through working with a therapist, working in the somatic therapy world, I was able to kind of reroute the experience of being seen and have a restorative experience of showing my body it's okay to be seen. It's okay to be out there. It's okay to be witnessed. But it took not only the self awareness around, okay, well, where is it coming from? Some
Mhm.
people say you don't need to know where it comes from. And there is truth to that because a lot of our trauma is pre verbal before our brain and can bring words to it. But there were very significant remembrances of instances in my life where I'm like, that is kind of a notch in the database, and I need to rewire that. And you can look at patterns and things that are showing up in your adult life. And if they're not working for you, chances are there's something that needs to have a restorative experience, right? Somewhere in that remembrance, in that database, we need to show our nervous system it's okay. It's okay to be seen. It's okay to express yourself. It's okay to say no. It's okay to have a boundary, right? It's okay to tell the truth. So again, this conversation is beautiful. It's so nuanced. And so I'm always very like, I always want to really state that when I'm talking about the nervous system because there are so many different angles and little bits. Working with a therapist, working with
Yeah,
someone who's going to help you work on the body level, that's how you start to have these restorative experiences and repattern,
right. And
reprogram.
then the world starts feeling just a little bit more safe.
It's a
Just
little
like
journey.
little micro drips of safety come in. You're like, "Yep, I'm good here." And I think it's so much more than just like I think you can, repeat to yourself, and if you have systems and stuff that's been taught to you from a somatic therapist or like a counselor or a coach, whatever it is,
Yeah.
but it's more than like I think the words of like, "I'm safe. I'm okay." I think there's a lot more to this conversation than like you're scrolling on Instagram and you're like, "Oh, someone on there told me that if I just repeat I'm safe, I'm safe, I'm safe in this moment," like it's not like when you're about to book a meeting with like the biggest possible client or book the podcast thing, like telling yourself you're safe. It's maybe just not enough. And so give yourself that grace that like if those little things that you learn on Instagram aren't working, it's okay. And there might be something deeper that needs to the work still has to be done on that. And I like that you say like it's so nuanced. Like for everyone
It's
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 so
it's
different.
it's so nuanced and it's not hackable. Like,
Right.
because we're such a biohacking world and
Yeah.
it's not hackable. So people are out there giving so many quick tips, which are great. And I love that the conversation's out there, but I'm also like, but it's very individualized and we can't really hack it because it's a database that's been literally could talk about like generational trauma that comes through the nervous system as well, but just even in this lifetime it's been programmed and in so many ways and it needs to be updated for us to actually step into and like take the armor off and be able to kind of step into what we really want to do or who we really are.
So if someone is feeling like I mean, there's so many ways that you can feel stuck.
Mm.
And I think a lot of the root of this, and whether you feel stuck in a relationship, feel stuck in a job, feel stuck in a pattern or a habit, like a self-soothing pattern or something, like even an addiction in your life, I feel like all of those branches come back to a root. So if you could like if we're diving a little bit deeper from like okay, you've identified that this, relationship or this job you chose this job and actually turns out you're stuck in it and you're like I don't know how to get out of this, but I know I've heard that little voice, that little ping that says something isn't going this isn't what I'm meant to do or there is another way. How do we start to like understand where that all comes from? Because I feel like you can't necessarily make the change until you know sort of where that comes from. Like how did you get stuck in the first place? Because I know that was part of my story was that once I started to figure out that the path I chose wasn't mine and that like maybe I didn't necessarily choose being a teacher and maybe there was a lot of pressure to do that. I've
Aw.
started to look into like, okay, there was something in my wiring patterning.
Yeah,
So how do we find that root?
it's so interesting. So this brings me into parts work, internal
Mhm.
family systems work, by Dr. Richard Schwartz. And this whole premise that as we're little people, when we're little girls and little boys, we develop these adaptive strategies or like these parts that kind of come up through the attachment versus authenticity. So we all need to attach. As children, as babies, we have to attach. As toddlers, as children, we have to attach because we have to be taken care of because we're completely dependent on an adult, right? We will find ways, be very adaptive strategies, start to people please, start to perform, start to do what other people want us to do, start to, right, resource out for like opinions and whatever. And we learn to do this all as a way to be loved, to be accepted, and to be part of community or family. Because on the nervous system level, if we were pushed out of a community or a tribe way back when, you would die. So
Right.
isolation or being pushed out or not belonging to the primal nervous system equals death. That's how much we will do anything to belong, to attach, and we'll even get rid of who we really are to attach.
Right.
And this is really sad for a lot of women. I work primarily with women, but the men who are listening here as well, when they realize I've built a life that I don't really want. I've built a life for other people.
Mhm.
I've chosen the career to please this person, right? I've acted this way or not done this thing to not piss off this person. Like they really start to have awareness, like you're saying, is step one. Wow, like, and this is where sitting with those feelings of like, why do I hate my job? Why do I feel numbed out? Why do I want to go home and drink a bottle of wine? Why am I snappy and bitchy and right? It's like almost sitting in that discomfort, increasing the tolerance to the pain is usually where it's the doorway to like, hey, I'm over here and I've been having this, dream or this want or this thing. I've just never been heard. So yeah, to answer your I love the parts work because it is we develop these parts, you could call them like a personality. We almost all have like multiple personalities, not like clinically diagnosed, but parts that have learned to be a certain way or do things a certain way to belong.
Yes.
'Cause that is survival.
Yeah, and it is just survival, and it's so wild to
Right.
me that in our brain, and you talk about this a lot on your podcast, is that, like, the idea like, it's you die if you don't. Like, it's being chased by like, a tiger is coming to your camp and, like, snatching you away as a child if you are not belonging to the crew, or you are left behind in the wilderness, or you are, left out in the cold if you do not belong to a tribe. So I wish our
Yeah.
brains could catch up a little bit and be like, hey, no, we live in like these in the Western world, but we're not there yet. And I think our brains are so interesting that we have done and made choices that really were just to belong. And if someone told you that you'd be, you work really well with numbers, you should be in finance, and you
Yeah.
end up working at a bank or in the accountant world, and then you're like, well, where did this come from? Because I'm not
Yeah.
really happy with this. Who told me
Yeah.
this, and why did I choose to do this? And it's just
Yeah.
belonging, and it's just an adaptive strategy to
Strategy. Yeah.
survive. It's
And
fascinating.
it's fascinating and the society that we live in, it breeds disconnection to self. Everything in our society is disconnecting people from the self. Everything. We could go down so many rabbit holes, like, and find so many rabbits to really, again, define this idea of we're so disconnected from self. We're so disconnected from, again, this embodiment. Take it right back to the very first thing we talked about this idea of living in our bodies and knowing what we want and knowing authentically what we need and then being able to ask for it because so many of us a don't know and b if we did know it was never acceptable, right? To get your needs met was like a no no,
Well,
so
we
we
have a
just
word. We call it needy.
yeah, yeah, right, we just learned to kind of go along, buy your house, get your mortgage, find your partner, get your day, nah, nah, nah. And I feel like it's a system that's like literally, it's like herding cattle to depression, right? People are going, wait a second, I don't think I'm happy. But we're so disconnected that it takes us almost getting to the extreme before we ask the question, am I happy? And can I even be happy, or am I stuck in survival? Because a lot of people they can't even pay their water bill. They don't even have the space, like they can't even ask themselves, am I happy? Because they're trying to put food on the tables for their kids. So there's another nuance to the
Hmm.
conversation, right? When we're talking about manifestation, and sometimes I'm like, okay, but also some people are just pure survival,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's a sad reality. And I think we can get really caught up in like, and yeah, like I feel very blessed that I was able to take that time and be like, oh, I don't know if this career was meant for me. And I had the time and the space, and I, had the savings account that allowed me to make those changes. But so many people are not in those situations. So for the listener who feels like they can't, like, I think there's so much of like, I wish I could become unbound. I wish I could unstick myself from this life that I've got, just like I'm in a cog in the wheel and I cannot stop, because if I stop this hamster wheel, either I'm not eating or someone in my family's not eating. What would be like a little baby step that that person could take?
So I have two. I have
Okay.
one for the person who has faith, who practices faith, who has a relationship to spirit, to God, to whatever it is. And that is to strengthen that relationship. Like pray, pray. Because when we do that, it starts to rewire our system that we're not alone.
Mm.
And the people who are in that deep survival, like you're saying, they're super stuck. They feel really alone, because it's very rare that we're turning on social media and we're seeing someone say, I'm really stuck and I'm really alone. We're seeing everything else, but for the most part. The other, for the person who's like, don't love faith, don't have a spiritual connection, I think I'm literally a meat suit here just to have a meat suit. um, Find a human then to start sharing this with, and to start maybe not outsourcing, but sharing and expressing. I feel a little stuck right now. There's something that happens when we start to almost speak the stagnance out of the
Mm.
body, right? We can talk about like processing it, crying. These are all ways we're moving the stagnancy, we're moving the stuckness. And we have to be willing to kind of sit with, like I've said this twice now, I think, sit with the pain or the stuckness, which is very uncomfortable, to kind of move through it. Yeah.
Those are great. I love like having that faith. I think there's been so many, it's become more apparent in this journey of mine, and I hear this echoed in so many other stories of like, I just started giving it up to God or the universe or
Yeah.
spirit, give it whatever name that you have, but like that's that one thing where it's like I have faith that the next step that I'm going to take is not going to be into the dark abyss, and that a brick or a stepping stone is going to be underneath my foot when I take the step,
Yeah.
which is hard to do. And I love like that's such great advice, just to start speaking that
Yeah.
stuckness out in the world. I've heard that if you like, let's say you're frustrated and you voice that you're frustrated, the frustration will actually lower like 35% automatically just by saying you're frustrated, or in this case, I'm stuck. I feel like there's something not working in my life. And if you can tell one other human, like,
Mhm.
and then maybe you tell one more human. And I think that is when you start getting it out of your body and releasing it, then all of a sudden, I don't know, and maybe you still don't have a faith, but like some bigger part of the world hears that.
Mhm.
Maybe it's just you that hears that for the first time and you're like, "Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
okay."
Mhm. And being witnessed, like having that being witnessed
Mm,
by another, and always having that person. And if you're someone who has no safe people, then find a counselor,
right.
right? But it has to be someone who feels safe. That's a really important kind of note to this
Mm,
exercise, It can't be the friend that's going to wallow in it with you and be like, I know your life sucks, right? You're super stuck. I'm super stuck. Like, that's not the person we're really looking for here. We're looking for that person who can hold it and witness it, right? And say, like, yeah, I'm just going to hold this space for you. Yeah. And the other thing I love to talk about when it comes to faith, if you don't have a specific, like, higher power you believe in, I start to say, ask yourself the question, like if you started to like perspective pivot a little bit, ask yourself the question, what if everything in my life was happening for me instead against me? What if, right? Like just what if? And if they can try that on for a little bit, because it just, if we're talking about the nervous system, it just kind of moves, it shifts the gear into a little bit more of like, huh, like I'm not alone,
Mhm.
right? I'm not fighting. I'm not fighting. It's like I'm here. What if everything is happening for me, right?
Even the pain and the discomfort.
Even the pain, which takes a lot of spiritual maturity to even look at. And I respect that because someone could hear that and say, what do you mean this was for my good and this was sounding good. So it's kind of a different perspective and I'm owning that, I'm naming that. But could you try that on, right? That everything that's happening is for me. It's almost like Plinko. It's like bringing us into our authentic, powerful self, right?
I love
And
that.
when there's shit, we got to grow. Like we got to, I don't know about you, but a lot of my growth has come from pain. Like new,
100%.
new
Yes.
level, new devil. It's like, what am I looking at now? Right?
Yeah.
I got here. Okay. Now what am I looking at?
Yeah, and I think it's hard in the moment to say like, you know, when something sort of what feels like terrible is happening, maybe not to you, but it is just happening. I think it's hard to be like, okay, well, it's happening for a reason. So I think in the in between, like sit with that, release that, cry it out, get it out, and then when you're able to take a deep breath, kind of on the other side of that, be like, I don't know what this is, but it is happening for a reason and it is happening for me. And in the moment when you're feeling all the feels, like give yourself the grace to feel that. Like letting that all out is so important. And there's been so many moments where yes, you just have to feel all of
Yep.
that. And then I think it's easier to say like once you sort of release that and get it out, then you can be like, okay, yep, this is happening and it's happening for me.
Yeah. Yeah. You kind of like shake the rocks up a little bit, right? You give all like a little bit of space in the system to start to maybe have a perspective pivot, right? You like
Yeah.
unjam the clutter. Yeah.
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 So one of the questions I ask everybody on the podcast is
Yeah.
what is your definition of freedom and how does that show up for you in your everyday life?
Authenticity.
Hmm.
So I just was with a couple. We just moved to a new city. And so community has been like a focus for me because connection is everything, safe connection. And I'm like, I just left my community 5 hours away, right? Like that was really hard. There's like grief there and all the things, even though they're only 5 hours. But we've met this new kind of group here. And I feel so energized when I'm with them and hanging out with them because I'm so myself. I don't have to be anything but. I can be fully expressed, fully witnessed, fully seen. And it feels so free. Like when you start to like love all the bits of yourself, the bits that were shamed, the bits that were, too much, too loud, you're annoying, whatever, you're a dreamer. Like when you actually start to like bring those bits back and you own them, that is freedom. That is freedom. And I said to my husband when we left, first of all, that we were with this other couple for like 6 hours and it felt like an hour. But
Wow.
I also said to him, like, I just like feel so, I think I used the word like sovereign or maybe free, but it was that resonance in my body. Like when you say freedom, that's what I think of. Me being able to be me and, there's no regrets, there's no chains, there's no, Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the goals, I think, of if if you walk through the steps of like no finding the awareness of becoming unstuck and then maybe starting to make those changes or think about how you could make the changes. Maybe then you like prepare for the changes, you make the changes, and then the freedom that comes after that. I mean, the ability to show up in environments where you are just fully yourself. You can say the wildest stuff, or you can say things that maybe like a old patterned version of you wasn't able to say or be seen in that. Like that is a beautiful
Yeah.
freedom that like it only you would have had to been in situations where you weren't able to be your authentic self. And so again, those situations, just like we just talked about, where you weren't yourself and you were closed off or you didn't say what was on your mind and or didn't share an opinion or whatever it was, like you had to go through that to know what it felt to
Yeah.
be
The
in an
contrast.
yeah, the contrast is so important.
Yeah. I honestly think this whole life journey is about coming back to who you really are. Like it really is like the GPS destination is coming back to who am I really on a soul level and what am I here to do? And that like literally wraps it up to the soul mission I talked about in the beginning. When we're on purpose, the physical body follows. I've seen it, I've experienced it, right? And people listening, like, let that be a breadcrumb for you to maybe go down and research and all the things. Um, but I really do feel like all of us want to find out who we really are. And we've just been led elsewhere to be what everybody else wants us to be, to
Yeah.
belong. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Honestly, that is like that I think we just wrapped up that whole conversation. That's amazing. It's a
It's like a
it's
pretty
a
little bow.
perfect place. Yeah, it's coming home. Someone said that to me the other day. It's just like and she said she looked at me. She's like, I think you're just coming home to yourself." And I was like, "Yeah, you're right. It's I've gone through the stuckness, all those parts, and it is about coming home." So if there's, I think to the listeners, like if there's a moment where you feel like a little bit more comfortable and like home for yourself, like lean into that, because that is, I think that's a beautiful place to go. Like if you have a goal of where you want to go, it's to go home to yourself.
And I'll have to come back on and talk more about the actual regulation because when we are regulated, we feel more home.
Oh,
Like
wow.
this experience feels home. This body feels like home. So there's just a different anchoring. You speak from a different place. Do you know what I mean? It's not here, it's here. There's a
Right.
knowing, there's a confidence, but it's not a cocky confidence. It's just a knowing, right? Yeah.
I love
It's
that.
cool. Yeah.
Yes, you will definitely have to come back on. I would absolutely love that. Thank you so much for your time today, Brittany. This has been amazing. And where can people find you if they want to know a little bit more about what you do or work with you?
So you're catching me at such a wonderful time. I'm at Brittany Lynn Wellness on Instagram, but I also have kind of a second account at Healing with Brittany Lynn. And I'm stepping into the full world of psychotherapy very soon. And so I'm debating on whether or not to start a new page, but I'm sure I'll debrief with you about that during the podcast recording. And then, of course, you can tune in to the Anxious Girl podcast, which we're going to be heading into season 2. So you can kind of get caught up around all of the first, I think it was 13 episodes. And yeah, I mean, we go everywhere with it, but it's all around kind of what Carly and I talked about today, but really getting into the nervous system work.
I love that. All right. We will put all of that in the show notes. Thank you so much, Brittany. This has been awesome.
Amazing. Bye, guys.
All right, friends. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Becoming Unbound. If you loved this episode, or if you know someone who also might need this episode, share it with them. Give us a like, subscribe wherever you're listening to your podcast, and we will see you next week on Becoming Unbound.